Good morning, and thank you so much for joining this discussion today. We're talking about innovation and how we can support good ideas to make a bigger impact across South West Wales. This is a roundtable panel discussion in the run-up to the Green Economy Conference and Exhibition, which 4theRegion is hosting with our partners on the 22nd of November in Swansea Arena. So I hope you're all signed up to attend and exhibit at that event, which promises to bring together businesses, organisations, people, community groups from across the 4 counties of South West Wales to showcase and celebrate our emerging and strengthening green economy. So today we're talking about innovation, and I'm delighted to have 4 experts in innovation in the room with me today. We've got Gareth Davies from Swansea University, in particular from the Agor IP project. We've got Peter Lord from Pembrokeshire Council, who is very involved in managing the Bridge Innovation Centre in Pembroke. We have got Chris Bailey from the Specific project, which is all about commercialising technologies to support the decarbonisation of buildings and construction. And I'm delighted that we've got Huw Watkins with us from BIC Innovation, who is an expert in supporting innovation and has been doing so for a long time right across Wales. So thank you all for being part of today's discussion. So this conversation about innovation in South West Wales and how we support our innovation ecosystem across our region is happening in the context of what's going on across Wales. And there was an innovation strategy published for the whole of Wales not too long ago. And what's interesting about that innovation strategy, I think, is that it defined innovation as the creation and application of new knowledge to improve the world and create value. So I think that's the context in which I would like to think about innovation, is how desperately it's needed in these challenging and changing times, and the importance of the kinds of innovation that improve our well-being. And we'll frame that in the context of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act as that kind of holistic well-being. So we want vibrant innovation culture in Wales that creates a stronger, fairer and greener Wales for everybody. And the innovation strategy from Welsh Government focused on 4 specific missions, which were education, economy, health and well-being, and climate and nature. So again, that holistic approach to why we need to innovate and what we need our innovation to do. It's about creating well-being for people, places and the planet. I would like to bring Huw Watkins in first from BIC Innovation. And Huw, I know you've been involved in supporting innovation across Wales for a number of years. And there have been previous initiatives, haven't there, in our region and Wales-wide that sought to support innovation and develop good ideas. And there are probably some lessons learnt from the past. So tell us a little bit about BIC Innovation and perhaps some of the background. Have different things been tried before to support innovation, and what has and hasn't worked in the past?
Yes, BIC Innovation have been going as an entity since 2004. And in that time, as you can imagine, we've seen several initiatives, programs, etc., that have been created to support the innovation agenda in Wales. Going back nearly 15 years, if I may, to what was back then called something called Innovation Partnership, INPART. And what that did, in a way, there was a bit of a budget by the Welsh Government to bring key players involved in the innovation ecosystem together, mainly from the public sector. So you had local authorities, economic development departments, FE colleges, HE, and anybody involved in the delivery of innovation support. The whole purpose of that really was to network, to share ideas, to bring challenges to the table, to see who could support certain specific agendas, and really to drive that and provide that focus that back then it was clear to see that innovation had a role to play. With a bit of reflection, and it's easy really to look back at that period and think, well, what was achieved in reality? Fine, you got to know the individuals involved, the organizations involved, but to what extent did that knowledge then transfer back to SMEs or to spin outs or to wealth creation opportunities. It's a question of, were we able to create the environment for innovation to flourish? I think there was a clear opportunity there to take innovation for what it was and really explore how you could leverage in then the additional support mechanisms from a finance point of view, from an innovation management perspective, to really understand what those barriers to innovation really were. I think what was important then as well, it created a bit of a platform to share new initiatives, bring them to the table, and allow those initiatives to be supported by other players. It didn't go as far as the private sector, and I think that's where its sort of limitations ended in a way. So I'm particularly keen to see how that gap or how that barrier could be overcome in an era where we need innovation more than ever before. And there are different drivers now influencing our thinking. We're much more digitally savvy. The focus on decarbonisation is stronger than ever. So with that sort of backdrop, how can we take what we had back then and apply it more strategically, if you want, with key representatives from that ecosystem in place?
Huw, I know that you work with innovators across Wales and support them to, I suppose, access funding and to understand the next steps for them and their organisations in terms of commercialising innovation. Talk us through what you think are some of the key challenges that face those businesses that are trying to make good ideas into successful businesses. So how do you go from having a great idea to having a really great successful business? What are the barriers that those companies face?
No pressure. It's a $6 million question in a way. It all depends, I think, where you're at in terms of your previous experience. So if you're an existing SME, let's say, and you've come across something quite unique, there's an opportunity to create some value out of that IP or know-how or whatever it might be, then you've got a bit of track record. If you're, on the other hand, maybe potentially spinning out from a university environment and you're scientifically or technically strong in terms of what you've developed and maybe not as experienced on the commercial side of things, then there's an opportunity to certainly bring that expertise in. That level of support exists in Wales really well from various sources. Access to finance is one of those areas where we're still struggling. We're behind the curve in many ways. So getting the right finance in at the right time for the particular innovation, for the particular enterprise is key. If you're forced to compete for equity, let's say, too early within that life cycle, then that might distort your focus on exactly what you need to do to deliver on that business plan. So it's getting the right support in at the right time. We often find that collaboration is one of those options that allows organizations to bring in the right support. It doesn't have to be like that, of course, but it often enhances the overall deliverable. So I think being able to understand who has the capability of delivering what in Wales, and that changes all the time, as we know. It's a very dynamic world that we live in. We've just come out of what was quite a busy ERDF period with several programs available. We're entering now a new phase in how innovation is supported in Wales. Entrepreneurs really do now need to keep a close eye on how they access that level of that support in the best way possible, and keep up with the constant change that we see in the ecosystem.
As you've mentioned there, the absence of European funding for innovation going forward is going to be a massive challenge, and I can see nodding heads in the room. Thank you, Huw. I'd love to come to Gareth next. Gareth, this conversation today has come out of some discussion that you and I have been having about the region and how we can support innovation better in South West Wales, and Swansea University has a huge stake in that as a big R&D organisation seeking to deliver benefit to the region whilst also develop huge expertise within the walls of the university itself. And Huw talked there about the importance of collaboration across that kind of support ecosystem. Tell me what you're thinking and why you feel the university could play a role in supporting innovation in South West Wales, and what you would love to see in terms of a better connected and more joined up ecosystem.
Pick some of the points there from Huw as well, which I think sort of fit with this, and also the framing that you had at the beginning in terms of, you know, Wales having an overarching sort of approach to innovation. I think there's the question of strategy, and then I think there's the delivery plan, which is emerging. I think there was a version recently published there, but it was the part around it being taking a less fragmented view of the world, and that's the part where we often saw efforts which were, some were focused on public sector, some on SMEs, some on large firms, some on specific sectors. And it's the part, if you take the climate crisis, you know, as an example, that's something which transcends, you know. So I think a lot of what there is in terms of technology, and great technology will come out of universities and other sources, but also I think the university has a role in, or a significant role in developing the talent, the skills, and supporting, emphasis being on supporting, you know, enterprise and activity in this. So if you took like the health system, and also the, you know, part of the challenge for them is decarbonisation. So where does that coincide? That, you know, it would be the part where, you know, work such as that within specific around photovoltaics and decarbonisation, the massive built environment, which is the health system. How do those things come together? So it's looking for those synergies. I think what Huw describes there in terms of finance and investment is always going to be something which is a perennial challenge. But, you know, I was taken by, there's one of the comments in the chat around Tata, and, you know, what is a significant, you know, there's an inflection point there for them in terms of fundamental technology and activity. But where, and or how does that coincide with things such as the opportunity around floating offshore wind to decarbonise? If, or as the plan is presented, of having electric arc furnace there, where does that renewable energy supporting what is very carbon intensive energy come in? But there is something here where, and I think this is the complexity of the ecosystem, which Huw quite rightly said evolves and changes and needs to be dynamic. There are things there which we'd see as not necessarily being the innovation itself, but where the regional economy comes in to support these things in being, in terms of whether it's fabrication, so that might be a sort of different skill set to what might be the technology development, or the entrepreneurial part of developing new ventures and business. But it's, I think, almost impossible to orchestrate that ecosystem perfectly, because it would be wrong if you had like some central computer trying to do it or whatever. But it's having the conditions, and this I think come back to your question around what is the role of the university as well, is to support that agenda in a coherent way with that longer term strategy, but also then working in support of the individual actors, whether they're startups, SMEs, cooperatives, you know, whatever form it takes, to challenge some of these missions, whether it's the economic one, the health one, the sort of green or the climate one. But I think it's that green economy is the bit where we do have that transition now. We're at a critical point in terms of, again, going back to the target point of that inflection, but it's the same as we've got in a lot of our infrastructure and other activities, that we grasp it rather than seeing it as being a challenge. And I think that's where the university, through its curriculum, through its tech transfer, through its research, just need to be attuned with the region as well as the broader piece. So
yes, absolutely. It is really interesting to consider the role of the university and one of the things that struck me when we first spoke, Gareth, was you have this sort of vision that across South West Wales there would be no wrong door, that an innovation or a good idea could approach any organisation, whether it's perhaps one of the local authorities or a business support agency, and that together you would make sure that the right people with the right support would be connected.
And I think that's the part where it's a real opportunity within our region. We work with Peter on activities or initiative in this space before. We work with Huw on what's the previous phase of AGO, and it's the bit where that sort of 6 degrees of separation of anyone, at least within South West Wales, it's probably about 2.5 in terms of sort of the engagement to what is that expertise or that capability which is missing. I think, again, finance and investment, but it's still a bit of a gap often perceived in this part of the world. But there are nodes, there are connections we could be making, trying to find that collectively. But it should be the part where if you're arriving in BIC Innovation Centre in Pembrokeshire or Baglan Innovation Centre in Baglan talking about floating offshore wind, you find yourself in the same networks, the same connections, community to make opportunities happen. The same as if you arrive with specific, it might be something which, they're part of the solution, but probably if it's like a total energy system, it wouldn't all reside within, Chris's team of activity, but there should be that, that point where it's not the pure luck of having the right first contact. There's something where there's a sort of a regional behavior. I think we can take some of these things on and, and a bit cliche, but there's always a win-win, which we can find.
And it's really core to our mission at 4theRegion is around collaboration, breaking down those silos. And in doing so, you actually empower all parts of that system by enabling people to work together much more effectively. It's interesting to consider this move to, this emphasis and focus on decarbonisation and the move to a greener economy in the context of access to finance and funding as well, because there may have been over many years great ideas that could have taken us a lot further forward than we are now towards a greener economy and a more sustainable way of life, but they weren't money making enough, or they weren't regarded as a key priority, and the investment just hasn't gone into some of those alternative green technologies. And so perhaps we've been really slow in moving forward with innovations in the right areas, and in fact sort of focused our innovation on more consumer products and more energy intensive tech. Perhaps slow on the uptake, but hopefully now like all geared up, all motivated to really put the investment where it's needed. Things like decarbonising the steelworks for Tata, and of course empowering an energy revolution, which is a huge opportunity area for South West Wales. And on that note, I'd like to come to Peter. Peter Lord, Pembrokeshire Council, but particularly involved in the BIC Innovation Centre. I'm sure the conversation around innovation in Pembrokeshire is largely focused around the energy sector and the opportunities there for the local economy and for the environment. Tell us a little bit about the sorts of innovation that gets supported in Pembrokeshire and where you feel the opportunities are to sort of strengthen that innovation ecosystem for South West Wales.
In terms of sort of opportunities for South West Wales, definitely I feel like it's a very strong period within innovation. Previously, we've been funded via different pots of money, EU money, and they kind of come and go because they're stop-starts in that scenario. We've got a huge amount of innovation infrastructure already around, and like Gareth said, having that that ecosystem where we can build together is brilliant. From the local authority point of view, we're quite resource short, even though we've got shared prosperity funds. That is on the table. That is the things we are looking at the moment. It doesn't share. Everyone's a bit short of money. In some way, that's great for innovation because we're innovating the way we are going to provide our support, because we don't have that luxury anymore that we have. But I think the Celtic Freeport from our side, and the way we're working together produces what looks like a very bright horizon. Innovation is going to be key to the development of the Freeport activity within Pembrokeshire and Port Talbot. So that is going to be generated, money is going to be generated through the Freeport activity. It's going to attract inward investment as well, which will help stimulate, the innovation economy. It doesn't have to just sit all around energy. The fact that investment within the innovation infrastructure can happen, it allows us to build that network. The Freeport's not just for Pembrokeshire, it will benefit the whole of South Wales in various different guises, whether it be supply chain or, employment opportunities. But the investment that will come out of the Freeport will, proliferate the whole of South Wales. So it actually creates quite a very optimistic opportunity at the moment that I think is probably, quite good. So these conversations, we have been having these conversations, but we've all been working on our own little piece. We work with our own little area, see where we can develop. But we worked, like Gareth said, we worked with Gareth in the past. We're not specialists in innovation. We're more enablers. We're there, the conduit to help it to happen. We have the support and the contact with the businesses. But without people like BIC Innovation to bring in that highly specialist stuff, we can't enable that activity to happen. So, predominantly we're looking at economic development, because obviously that's our role. But the wider picture is out there, and we're looking at every aspect now. And that's why I think, even though the funding has all changed, everything's changed in terms of the environment, it does offer us a sustainable future going forward, because something like the Freeport will enable that, that funding and that infrastructure to exist without the input of a pot of money every now and again.
Freeport is interesting, and it's building on an idea which has been around in the innovation sector for a long time about creating clusters. And so something like the Freeports will hopefully enable the creation of clusters of businesses focused around Pembrokeshire and Port Talbot, but as you say, benefiting the wider region through relationships and supply chains. And there is something, isn't there, about creating a magnet that brings together businesses with kind of shared interests and shared objectives. Have you seen the power of creating clusters? And how do you think, how important is that in terms of kind of geographically co-located businesses? Do you see in Pembrokeshire, for example, with the kind of energy sector, that businesses are more likely to collaborate with each other, or is everybody very territorial behind their closed doors doing their own innovation in a silo?
Probably a bit of both, depends who it is. Some of the larger companies, they will have closed doors. However, saying that, I think the larger companies are talking more than they've ever done, which is brilliant, and especially in terms of the South Wales cluster. In terms of the Innovation Centre, we don't have one specific sector. We have a real mixed group of businesses there. They, within their own rights, are linked to other areas, and other innovation sort of pods and centres. We get a lot of businesses cross-working with each other. We've got a couple in the Innovation Centre itself have actually merged. They've joined, they've got joint products, they've merged businesses, they've created new spin-offs from that. Cluster-wise, I don't think the Innovation Centre is the sole cluster, because where we talk about clusters, and we've always looked at clusters in the past, I don't see Pembrokeshire Innovation Centre as a cluster. It's part of the South Wales cluster. It's grown a much wider sort of region than just in a small isolated area. I can see the benefits of clustering small groups around certain technologies, but I think there's much greater benefits in having more of a regional activity. So kind of like throwing the question on its head a little bit, I think the cluster does exist, but it's more of a region at the moment. And that's the general approach. Whether that's been designed that way or whether that's just happened, that seems to be the better way of working. So our link with Port Talbot, our link with Swansea, our link with Carmarthenshire, you know, those seem to have naturally driven out of the work that's happened in the past 15 years.
Great to hear about that sort of regional working and a kind of innovation corridor stretching across South West Wales, certainly. And as you were talking there, it raised that important point about the bigger companies, and I think that's just worth underlining, that any sort of regional innovation ecosystem really, I think, does need to engage those big companies and create open doors within those larger companies to hear from smaller businesses in the area and people with good ideas. And I guess it just needs that sort of porous transfer of good ideas into and from large organizations too. And it harks back to what Huw was saying about innovation ecosystems of the past, where it was very much kind of public sector focused and didn't have that private sector SME or business engagement so strongly. So it'd be great to see those large established companies across our region really feeling part of an innovation ecosystem and aware of what was happening and able to tap into expertise, not just within the universities, but within the small business ecosystem as well. Yeah, really interesting. I'd like to bring Chris Bailey in next. Chris is from a project called Specific, which I think has just been awarded another round of funding. So perhaps you'll tell us a little bit about that, Chris. But Specific is set up to commercialise decarbonisation technologies. How's that going?
It's been going for a while. You know, Specific's been around for 10, 15 years now in various guises and funded by different bodies. And we talked about the loss of European funding being a significant kind of blow, and that still rings true today, although we're kind of moving on from that as we identify other ways of funding the research, the critical research into sort of a just transition to net zero technologies that we are so kind of passionate about and have built up such a sort of head of steam and momentum behind in South Wales over the last decade and more. I think we are continuing to pursue that, but in doing that, we need to identify new avenues through which to kind of focus our energy, so to speak. We still need to decarbonize buildings. We still need to encourage house builders to build net zero buildings. You know, there was an article yesterday I commented on about saying how we should be lobbying government to mandate that all house builders in Wales should include solar panels, for instance. And if you look at the fundamentals of it, there's no reason why we shouldn't be doing that. I spoke about it in terms of things like the tools we have available to us in Wales being things like the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act, and saying, right, well, if a local authority has a planning department and they are technically bound by Wellbeing and Future Generations Act, then shouldn't they be considering any application for building homes in that context and saying, well, if we're building homes today, shouldn't they all be future-proof, just to the maximum possible extent within our capability? And I think that I think we need, what we're missing, I say no, that's harsh on people who are in positions of power. What we need more of is strong leadership and a continued long-term vision for what we're trying to achieve. And from a UK perspective, we know that isn't necessarily what we get, but from a local perspective, we've got the opportunity to establish and continue to excel in our own senses of excellence around decarbonisation or whatever technology and innovation it might be, because there's so much more than decarbonisation and green and net zero. It rolls over into everything. Food production, obviously, we've got all these different food forums as well. But if you can secure supply chains by making them resilient and sustainable, then you create a future-proofed economy that is more able to weather the storms, both physically and metaphorically, that we will be experiencing in years to come. And I think that the leadership element is really critical. We need to have that continuity of vision, because even things like training, we talked about skills. We have these new jobs, new technologies that are coming on that will need new skills. The Freeport and the Celtic Sea wind farms, offshore wind farms, and things will be a new skill set. But it's not an overnight switch. It's a long-term transition and skill-based training, and it's one that isn't here yet. So we can't say, right, let's start training thousands of offshore wind engineers, because in reality they would be sitting idle for 5 years or a decade or whatever it might be. So it's more about the preparatory element of that, putting the things in place, making sure that people know that it's coming or could come, should it be successful, which we all hope it will be. And that might well create 20,000 jobs, but it won't be 20,000 jobs in a day. It'll be 100 jobs, and then it might be 1,000 jobs, and then it will trickle feed in over the next 10, 20 years. And that's the reality of it. So in what we can still continue doing today, we as an organization are still looking to support innovators, if you like, as we're talking about today, with access to knowledge and shared resources to help de-risk some of that process for them. So as much as we've got there's the biggest challenge, if you like, and the hidden challenge in all of the innovation process is the process, the paperwork, the red tape, the people, the contacts, the repeated contacts, the continuity of contact, and the forums under which we engage. So being able to do all that is a fundamental, but layered on top of that is having enthusiastic people that can push you forward. And what we, if you've got someone who's got a great idea and they meet a brick wall time and time again, or they get stuck in the mud, all of these things where they really have to push forward in order to make that happen, more than a handful of accounts where you could say someone's given up. And I think that we need to be those people that sit behind the people that would otherwise give up and help push them forward. They don't necessarily know what they need, but the minimum level of things we can give them is encouragement. And then we can point them in the right direction of people that have the knowledge and the capability to solve the problems that they're facing. And as a network, as a community, we can do that. I do that. That's what I try and kind of fulfill. I call it knowledge brokering. So it's not, I am a business development manager, that's my title, but I'm a knowledge broker. I find out what other people know, and I try and learn a little bit about it, enough that I can understand it and transpose it to other people that don't know what that person does. And then once you've realized you can make those connections between people, you've made bridges that can solve problems that weren't able to be solved before.
Really important messages there about the need for kind of cheerleading those entrepreneurs and innovators. It's a challenging journey to turn a good idea into a viable operation and bring it to fruition, and it does need that sort of support and cheerleading from an emotional and psychological perspective, as well as like understanding what you might need to do with regards to intellectual property and the kind of legal side of it, which is probably a really challenging objective. I was struck by what you said about the need for example, the decarbonisation of buildings and the slow progress on that. Do we need Welsh government regulation to say that all houses need to adhere to certain standards? I wonder actually where we have failed is in bringing small businesses with us on this journey, because I think that the technologies may well be there and the innovations have been innovated, and we know what we need to do and we have many of the solutions, but somehow they haven't permeated into the kind of mainstream economy. They've remained as this kind of innovative and high tech, and we have all these pilot projects and innovative housing projects, where the mainstream are to a large extent carrying on very much as they always have been, and so have been sort of left out of some of that support to innovate and try new things within their businesses. I would like to see a regional innovation ecosystem that really started at the grassroots and in the small businesses in across sectors, but really understood that where change really happens is in the day-to-day business trading of small companies across our region. And if we make innovation into a thing that only happens in an ivory tower and needs an IP lawyer involved, then it takes it way out of reach of small businesses that really do need to change the way that we all work. Whether that's embracing new technologies or a different system of values, and educating our clients in what they should be asking us to do. It just seems that progress hasn't been made. So I'm interested if people think there's more we could do. Great insights from across our panel, and keen to open up to any questions and comments from the room. And inviting panelists to raise your hands and respond to points as they're made. But please, if you're listening to this and you've got questions, I'd love to bring you in for a comment or a question. Yes, Farouk. Yes, please do come in.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Don. So just to introduce myself, I am the manager at Natural Products BioHub. So we are a recent initiative. We had a feasibility study last year, and we are focusing on linking up industry, academia, and the consumers within the natural product session. So Swansea University is excellent in biosciences, in algal technologies, in medicine. And there was a gap that we have got links with quite a lot of industries which are outside of the region. And we have been supporting and spinning out, but not within the region. So last year we did a feasibility study to see how best we can support. And we are very grateful to the Swansea Council and to the UK government that we have been funded by this Shared Prosperity Fund. And from September onward, we have started now to link up in these connections that to see that, okay, where are the gaps between the industry and the academia and how we can bring together, whether it's an agri-food, whether it is in terms of the medicine development or whether in terms of the green technologies, green economies, little small economies working together. So that's where we are. So we are developing the team now, so we'll be happy to help. And we recently had one symposium where we had about 50 plus companies and different nationalities come together. And I'm delighted to say that they're seeing that the Swansea's expertise within the university and what the Swansea City Council is doing in terms of the green economy, they see it that they want to move into region or want to work and collaborate with us. So we are having a good interest from the different industries, and we will be participating in the Green Economy Conference as well. And again, there is a chance to work with you and then see that, as Don said, that we want to work with both at the higher end, the bigger industries, the innovative industries, but also where is the supply chain, how we can help the supply chain at the local level and then help build them.
Thank you, Farouk. And that's a key opportunity area as well, natural products and how we can create new industries that are aligned with that greener and more sustainable economy that we're trying to build. And so great to have a project that is specifically targeted at supporting innovations in natural products. Thank you. We've got another contributor. Lee, what would you like to say or ask?
Hi, everyone. So as a designer, this is a subject I could bang on about for ages, but a few of my sort of immediate thoughts. I'm having received some funding from the Welsh Government for Solar Wheel, the company I work for, as well as what I do normally, or on the side, whatever. Anyway, so I have been through the process of getting some funding. And it's kind of great. It's 50% of what you spend and that kind of thing. But some of the things that make that complicated are that you're asked to sort of predict what you're going to do in an innovation sort of cycle. And that's like, I don't know, how long is a piece of string? It's really hard. And we're coming up against, oh, can we massage the money? Can it go from there to there? Because actually that's costing more and that part of the project isn't. So that's one of the tricky things. Which has led me to kind of think about this idea of finding our inner Americans in this situation. You know, if you go to LA where they've got a traffic problem, they've set up a can-do office. If you've got any kind of idea that might deal with transport, they'll fund it, literally have the money, catapults, you know, whatever you can think of to transport people around. There's a real like, go and do it, rather than, oh, well, that sounds a bit expensive, you know, can we? Not really sure. And then I was thinking also about people like our friend James Dovey with his project for Llanelli, really struggling to get funding. You know, he's like a visionary, but because he's not a company and he's not, you know, it's not like, oh, you haven't got minimum 10 employees and 3 years of accounts and blah, blah, blah. No one will touch him, but he will revolutionize Llanelli given the means to do so. So is that a universal creative income? Is it, you know, I don't know, how do we support people who are not really like garden shed tinkerers, but also them, but, you know, young people without that weight of collateral that is an enabler whenever it comes to funding, where people will believe you because you've got bank statements going back 3 years. Oh yeah, last thing before I waffle on too long, but changing the narrative around innovations that are really important. One example in Wales recently is the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, which is an innovation in a way, in the way that we move through our spaces. And it's been widely, well, it's been very contentious, let's put it that way. But is it because of the story that was told? And another example is 15-mile cities, this idea of changing the way we view our living parameters is being billed as some kind of like Stalin-esque sort of, method to quash our civil liberties. But actually it's just a story, it's just a narrative around how we innovate around constraints coming at us from all sides and the changes we need to make.
Yeah, great contribution to the discussion, Lee, and that holistic idea of what innovation is exactly what I was hoping would come out of today's discussion, that those sort of societal innovations and innovative government policy is really important as well. But I'd be interested to see what the panel's response is to that challenge around the kind of innovation that slips through the net, or the brick wall that innovators feel they face. Chris, what do you think?
I mean, it's great ideology, and also something we can try to enact. But I think we have to maybe look outside of traditional funding structures to enable those people. We have accountability in terms of how certain money is spent, I suppose, and that makes it very difficult to be more free with spending it. And I don't manage that money, and I have no influence on that. I'm beholden to that system as well. But what I have seen is people like Help Bank. So there's an organization backed by high net worth individuals who are philanthropists, who are, we're reaching outside of government, to enable those people basically. And there's a gentleman called Simon, I follow him, he's made a few million selling a tech company, and he created Help Bank, and that looks to fund individual people with good ideas. And the 500 quid, £1,000, £5,000 if you want to start a business. He makes a lot of following on social media about going into somewhere and saying, I'll give you 10 grand if you quit your job right now and start a business, that kind of thing. And the idea that you can encourage people in different ways, I think that enabling future thinkers innovators model, innovators versus invention was a point that Lee made as well. And I think we've got that kind of what is innovation has always been the question. It changes daily. Innovation is doing things differently and doing things, and I think that invention is new stuff. And I think there's lots of different ways of looking at that. And innovation is often a tagline that we use, and it's very broad sweeping. The innovation strategy for Wales is also a broad sweeping document. So it's such a wide thing. But what it means is we can focus in on the things that are important to us. For me, it's about creating, like I said, that narrative of why are we doing things, being purpose driven. For each individual person, that will be different. If we can give people the strength to follow that purpose through all of the leaps and the hurdles, then it gives them a chance to create the vision that they have and build a following and build momentum that allows them to access the bigger things once you get past that. And we've seen that with community energy, for instance, where once you've got a bit of resource behind you and you've gone through the leaps and hurdles of creating a community energy resource, which actually then generates a bit of money, then that money is theirs to choose what to do with. And suddenly you start to be able to fund those projects that otherwise kind of fall out of the remit of local authorities or government.
Yes, interesting in how we can fund the kind of grassroots of innovation in different ways. Gareth, would you like to come in on that point of those innovators who are slipping through the net?
Yeah, and so thanks, John. And I just taken by sort of Lee's comment there about that sort of that can-do attitude, and it's the part where no one has the monopoly on sort of good ideas. And I think the example you gave from Llanelli being sort of case in point, where you got something because it just doesn't fit into the familiar structures or the silos or the processes. That I think that's the part where everything comes back to culture, and that's where there's a bit of an opportunity in Southwest Wales. I think where having that sort of can-do culture, and I can't remember who said it, was the culture being sort of the product of all the conversations within an organisation or a setting. And so this being a perfect example of it, this form that you brought together here, but then everything else happening around 4theRegion and all the organisations of setting that part where that can do for those, whether it's innovation. It sounds pejorative to say almost like bubbling up rather than top down, but it comes back to the public sector in particular should be creating the conditions for it. What Peter and Co are doing in sort of Bridge Innovation Centre, but it's the part where I don't see why within Llanelli that opportunity can't be just sort of mainstreamed and absorbed into what economic regen within Llanelli's doing, but just empowered with the resource needed to. So I think a lot of the time it comes back, and there was the comment in the chat, and not to disagree with it in terms of saying about leadership, but it's the part where often sort of leadership and strategy, we tend to think, oh, it's too long term, we never get around to doing it, or we've forgotten about it because of a political cycle or funding projects or whatever. But we do need to start with the values in terms of what sort of society, what sort of region do we want into the future, and that sets the conditions. So why isn't the public sector as a significant part of this region saying, yeah, every bit of built environment we create now is going to be net zero? We know it makes economic and financial sense because 85% of the cost of a building is in its running, not in its building. So you just think, come on, that's the part where take that leap. It's difficult, and people say, oh, there's no money. There is. I think that's been seen across the bridge as well. When other priorities seem to emerge. But that's the part where I think we need that leadership and will, and it's got to come from the collective, not just from cycles.
Yeah, it made me think as you were speaking there that we keep hearing those words about, empowering and enabling different parts of the system to play their role against these kind of big missions, big challenges, and so important to make sure we are really involving and bringing everybody with us. Huw, I'll come to you. How do you think we can stop innovation falling through the net?
I think there was, some fantastic points just made there by Gareth and Chris, to be honest, and I'd just like to pick up on a few of those, if I may. And somebody touched on on culture and leadership and values, and how can you then bring those together at community level, let's say, where there is a will to initiate change and drive new opportunities. And it's the sort of thing that I'm quite encouraged about, to be honest, because if you've got a group of people, let's say, that see an opportunity, are willing to get stuck in, form social enterprises, or employee-owned businesses as a different mechanism, perhaps, to your more traditional routes of development, then you're more likely to realize different values and different outcomes from those initiatives, and quite possibly as well be able to attract different kinds of funding that might stimulate and allow and facilitate those types of projects. And they can be ambitious projects as well. I'm aware that there's 34 social enterprises happening all over the county at the moment. That's quite rich for a population of 117,000. The density there is quite high. They feed from one another, they network extremely well, and are forming umbrella organisations to share resources and to capitalise on each other's knowledge and know-how. And if we've got the appetite and the desire to operate in that way, then I think we're going back to fundamentally what the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act is all about. It's creating that value, that wealth at every level, and that's a good example of making sure that no ideas fall through the net and they're capitalised upon.
I think it sounds as though a key role for a regional innovation ecosystem would be to create that messaging and that sense of culture that we want for South West Wales, which is to say this is a place where we need good ideas, and good ideas will be supported to happen, whether those are good ideas about how to regenerate your local town centre, or how to transform your business, or how to create that next pioneering cutting edge technology that's going to change the world. It's kind of at all of those levels. We need that culture and messaging that really brings everybody with us and is empowering and enabling. I was also thinking that another way of bringing good ideas out of communities and businesses that I've thought has been effective is like challenge funds as well, isn't it? Where again, it's kind of mission-led and it's challenge-led. I remember when the Welsh Government had the Foundational Economy Challenge Fund, and it really brought good ideas out from different types of organisations, public and private sector, in response to a challenge, and the opportunity for really anybody, whether you were an individual or a large organisation, to say, I've got a great idea for this challenge. And Lee's idea about that American attitude of saying, okay, we've got a traffic problem, how can we solve it? Like, let's be much more joined up and open about saying, okay, well, these are the challenges. Who's got a good idea? And then perhaps across that support ecosystem, there will be different organizations, different funding, and different advisors who can help those innovators take that journey forward. I think it's been a useful first discussion about how we can create a stronger and more holistic culture of innovation here in South West Wales. And I'm thinking that there's something about challenging times that can be a catalyst for innovation. And here we are in 2023 with huge societal, economic, environmental, mental health challenges. We need innovation more than ever to try and tackle the situations that we find ourselves in. And we need something very different from business as usual. We need the kind of innovation that helps us to build truly a well-being economy, where we're building our quality of life and our connections to each other, and our well-being in that holistic sense outlined in the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. So some exciting things happening on lots of different levels. We've talked about the Celtic Freeport and huge activity happening to try and catalyse those industries, but we've also underlined the need for innovation at every level and social entrepreneurship, as well as innovation in its more traditional form. Thank you to all those of you who've come along and joined the conversation, and thank you so much to our expert panel. I've really enjoyed speaking to you all today, and look forward to catching up with you again at the Green Economy Conference on the 22nd of November, and hoping very much to see you all there. Thank you. Bye for now.